The HOA thought Marcus Holloway was just another rancher. Quiet, ordinary, easy to push around. But when they tried to choke him out of his own land, they didn't just awaken resistance. They lit a fire that would consume everything they built. This isn't just a story about property lines. It's about power, and how one man, cornered and underestimated, turned the cage they built for him into their own prison. "Excuse me, sir. You can't go past this gate." The voice was sharp, cold, and full of authority that didn't belong to her. Marcus Holloway stopped mid-step, his calloused hands gripping a sack of feed. Sweat clung to his brow from the August heat. But it wasn't the sun making his blood boil, it was the woman standing squarely in front of him. She was middle-aged, crisp navy blazer, a clipboard clutched in one hand like a weapon. Behind her, a shiny metal gate stretched across the dirt road, the only road leading into Marcus's ranch. Marcus tilted his hat back, staring at her in disbelief. "Ma'am, this is my property. I need to get these supplies in. My cattle don't exactly wait for HOA rules." Her lips curled into a tight smile, the kind that wasn't friendly at all. "Rules are rules. The Homeowners Association voted to install this gate last week. From now on, only residents in compliance get a key." Marcus felt the words hit him like a slap. In compliance? He'd lived here longer than any of them. His family had poured sweat and soul into this land. And now this woman, this outsider, was telling him he couldn't drive into his own ranch. "You gotta be kidding me," he muttered, stepping closer. "My grandparents built that barn before you people even knew this place existed. This land is mine. You don't get to lock me out." She didn't flinch. If anything, her smile grew sharper. "Sir, if you want to discuss compliance, you're welcome to file an appeal with the HOA board. Until then, you'll have to park outside the gate. Walk your feet in if you must." Marcus's jaw clenched. He looked past her, at the road stretching dusty and endless, at the fields where his cattle waited, at the neighbors peeking through curtains, whispering, watching. The humiliation burned hotter than the sun. He shifted the sack of feed higher on his shoulder and muttered under his breath, "We'll see about that." Then he walked past her through the gate, his boots crunching on gravel with defiance. She called after him, her voice laced with smugness. "This isn't over, Mr. Holloway." Marcus didn't look back. But in his gut, he knew she was right. Marcus Holloway wasn't just any rancher. He was a black man running cattle on land that carried the weight of his family's history. Land bought and protected through generations, a patch of soil that represented dignity, survival, and legacy. And now, a shiny new Homeowners Association, the HOA, was trying to fence him out. The conflict wasn't just about property lines or gate keys. It was about power, about who got to decide what belonged and who didn't. Marcus had fought his whole life to carve out respect in a world too quick to deny it. But this was different. This was personal. Because when someone tries to lock a man out of his own home, they aren't just closing a gate. They're declaring war. Inside his weathered farmhouse, Marcus sat heavily at the kitchen table. The sack of feed he'd carried in still sat by the door. His hands trembled with anger as he replayed the confrontation. Jorge, his longtime ranch hand and friend, leaned against the counter. "They really told you that? You can't drive in unless the HOA approves?" Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "Told me I wasn't in compliance. Like this ranch and this barn, these fences ain't been here for decades. Like I don't belong on my own land." Jorge shook his head. "Sounds like they're trying to push you out, man. Maybe they don't like that you're not one of them." Marcus didn't respond, but Jorge's words hung heavy. He knew what this was about. He'd seen the looks, heard the whispers. The HOA wasn't just about clean lawns or painted fences. It was about control. And people like Marcus, independent, proud, unwilling to bow, didn't fit their mold. In the weeks that followed, the pressure only grew. Notices pinned to his gate, letters threatening fines, demands that he update his barn, repaint his fences, remove livestock trailers that had been parked there for years. It was harassment dressed up as bureaucracy. And every day that gate reminded him of the insult. The neighbors whispered that Marcus was stubborn. The HOA members whispered he was trouble. But Marcus knew the truth. They wanted him gone. Still, he refused to bend. He paid no fines. He ignored their letters. He carried his supplies through the gate on foot, sweat pouring down his back, pride in every step. Because this wasn't just about convenience. It was about principle. And deep down, Marcus was already planning, already searching for a way to turn the tables. What Marcus didn't know yet was that this battle wasn't going to end with notices and threats. The HOA thought they had him trapped. They thought the gate was their victory. But that very gate, the one they used to humiliate him, would soon become their prison. And Marcus Holloway? He would be the one holding the only key. Marcus pushed the heavy double doors open. The community hall smelled of polished wood and fresh coffee, but the air was thick with tension. A dozen folding chairs formed neat rows filled with residents. At the front, a long table draped with a white cloth bore a sign, HOA Board Meeting Residents Welcome. Marcus's boots echoed on the floor as every head turned. Some looked curious, others nervous. A few narrowed their eyes. At the center of the table sat Marjorie, the same woman from the gate, clipboard now replaced with a gavel. She tapped it lightly, her lips stretching into that familiar, tight smile. "Well, Mr. Holloway," she said, voice dripping with false sweetness. "What a surprise to see you here. Do you have, business with the association?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He walked slowly to the front, every step deliberate, until he stood tall before the table. "My business," he said evenly, "is the fact that you're blocking the only road to my ranch, my land, my cattle, my livelihood." A murmur rippled through the room. Marjorie leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "Mr. Holloway, as we've explained in our notices, you're in violation of multiple HOA codes, non-standard fencing, excessive equipment visible from the road, and let's not forget, livestock trailers parked longer than 72 hours. Until you resolve these issues, access to certain community amenities will be restricted." Marcus's laugh was short, bitter. "Community amenities? That road isn't an amenity. It's the only way in and out of my ranch. You can paint it however you want, but you're cutting me off from my own home." From the back of the room, a voice chimed in. "He's got a point. If they can do it to him, what's stopping them from doing it to any of us?" All eyes snapped to a man in a ball cap. An older neighbor Marcus recognized, Mr. Price. Marjorie's smile faltered for a moment before she struck the gavel. Bang! "Order, Mr. Price. Please remember that all comments must be directed through the chair." But the room had shifted. People were whispering louder now. Marcus saw it, cracks forming in the HOA's grip. He leaned forward, voice low but caring. "You can bury me in papers, Marjorie. Fine me. Threaten me. But let me make this clear. My family isn't going anywhere. Not for you, not for this HOA, not for anyone." Silence followed, heavy and electric. Marcus turned and walked out, the echo of his boots louder than the gavel. Marjorie slammed in frustration. The HOA doubled down. Fines stacked like bricks. hundreds, then thousands of dollars for violations Marcus had never even heard of. One notice claimed his barn's roof color disrupted community uniformity. Another accused him of unapproved vegetation, as if wild grass answered to HOA rules. And when Marcus refused to pay, the harassment escalated. They blocked delivery trucks at the gate. One morning, Jorge found a warning ticket slapped on Marcus's tractor for illegal parking on private land. The message was clear: comply or be crushed. But Marcus wasn't a man who bowed easy. Late nights found him hunched over his kitchen table, papers scattered, property deeds spread wide. A laptop hummed faintly as he scrolled through the county records, searching for a thread, some detail, some weakness. And then one night, he found it. Marcus squinted at the screen. A line of text, buried deep in legal jargon, stopped him cold. The parcel number didn't match. He clicked, cross-referenced, clicked again. His pulse quickened. The land where the HOA's shiny new gate sat, the very barrier that used to choke him, wasn't owned by the HOA at all. It was owned by a private real estate company. A company in debt, desperate for cash, its holdings listed for sale. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. For the first time in weeks, the fire in his chest felt less like rage and more like opportunity. "Jorge," he called, voice echoing through the quiet farmhouse. "Get in here. You need to see this." Jorge shuffled in, wiping grease from his hands. When Marcus explained, Jorge's eyes widened. "Wait, you mean that gate? They don't even own the dirt it's sitting on?" Marcus nodded, tapping the screen. "Not a single inch." For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then Jorge broke into a grin. "Oh, man, they don't even see it coming?" Marcus didn't move right away. He didn't rush. He watched, waited. Every fine, every notice, every blockade only made his resolve harder. Because he knew something the HOA didn't. They thought they had him trapped. But the ground beneath their precious gate wasn't theirs. And Marcus Holloway? He was about to own it. One morning, Marjorie stood at the gate, clipboard in hand, ready to hand Marcus another violation slip. Oh, she smirked as his truck rumbled down the road, blocking his path with a practiced air of authority. "Mr. Holloway," she began, "I'm afraid we've added another—" Marcus rolled down the window, cutting her off. His eyes burned with quiet triumph. "You might want to hold off on that paperwork, Marjorie." She blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm, almost amused. "See this gate you're so proud of? In about a week, it's not going to belong to the HOA anymore. It's going to belong to me." Her smile froze. For the first time, Marcus saw something new in her eyes. Fear. He tipped his hat, shifted gears, and drove past her, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. The war had only just begun. Marcus sat alone at his kitchen table. The only light came from the lamp above, casting long shadows across stacks of paperwork. Deeds, contracts, maps. Every document was another weapon in a war he never asked for. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion heavy in his bones. Weeks of fighting had taken their toll on him, on his cattle, on Jorge, even on his daughter Emma, who had started asking quietly at dinner, "Daddy, why don't they want us here?" He hated that question most of all. Marcus wasn't a man who showed fear, but the weight was crushing. The ranch had been in his family for generations. His grandfather had broken his back tilling the same soil. His father had raised cattle here, and now he was the last line. If he lost this land, he'd lose more than a home. He'd lose his bloodline's legacy. He pushed the thought away and leaned over the deed again. His finger traced the parcel number of the land beneath the gate. It was still listed for sale, still vulnerable. Marcus whispered to himself, voice low, steady. They think they own me, but I'm going to flip the board. He picked up his phone. Mr. Patel, Marcus said when the lawyer answered. It's Holloway. We need to move fast. I want papers drawn up to purchase lot 1183B. And there was a pause. Then Patel's voice, sharp and surprised. You're buying the gate land. That's right, Marcus said, a ghost of a smile on his lips. And once I do, this HOA is about to learn who really owns the ground they're standing on. But the HOA wasn't blind. Marjorie sensed Marcus was planning something. His confidence rattled her. His refusal to bow, to break. It stirred whispers in the community. At the next board meeting, she slammed her gavel harder than usual. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, we have a problem. A resident who refuses to comply. If we allow him to ignore our bylaws, the entire fabric of this community unravels. Some neighbors nodded, murmuring in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably. Therefore, Marjorie continued, the board has voted to authorize legal foreclosure proceedings on Mr. Holloway's property. His unpaid fines will be converted into a lien. If he continues resisting, we will seize his ranch. Gas filled the hall. Mr. Price, the older neighbor in the ball cap, stood abruptly. You can't do that, Marjorie. That man's land has been here long before your HOA ever existed. That ranch is this community. Marjorie fixed him with a cold glare. Mr. Price, sit down. You're out of order. But whispers were spreading. Not everyone was comfortable with this. Some were scared, some defiant. And Marcus could see it. Cracks widening in the HOA's power. Still, the foreclosure threat was real. If Marcus slipped, if he missed even one legal detail, they could ruin him. The stakes had never been higher. Back at the ranch, Jorge slammed a toolbox shut in frustration. Marcus, these people aren't stopping. They're trying to take everything. Are you sure this plan of yours will work? Marcus adjusted his hat, eyes never leaving the horizon. I don't just think it'll work. I know it will. Because I'm not fighting them on their rules anymore. Jorge frowned. Then whose rules are we fighting on? Marcus's jaw tightened. Mine. The next 2 weeks were a storm. Marcus quietly funneled every spare cent into the land deal. He mortgaged equipment, sold off 2 prized cattle, and cut back on supplies. Every sacrifice burned, but each dollar brought him closer to control. Meanwhile, the HOA ramped up their harassment. Anonymous complaints piled up. HOA officers drove by the ranch at night, cameras flashing. Emma woke one evening to find a warning notice taped to her bedroom window. She cried, asking if they were going to take her room away. Marcus held her close, anger boiling like fire in his chest. He didn't tell her what he whispered into her hair, but inside the promise was iron. No one takes this from us. No one. One Saturday, Marcus went into town. He was surprised when Mrs. Daniels, a widow from down the road, stopped him outside the feed store. Marcus, she said softly, I don't agree with everything the HOA does, but people are scared. They say if you fight them, they'll raise dues for all of us. Marcus studied her tired eyes, the way she wrung her hands. Fear had poisoned the community. Fear was Marjorie's weapon. Mrs. Daniels, Marcus said firmly, bullies only win if we let them. If they see one man stand, maybe they'll think twice before pushing the rest. His words spread faster than he knew. That evening, Jorge came back from town with whispers. Some neighbors quietly rooting for Marcus, others terrified, and a few willing to help. The tide was shifting. Finally, the day came. Marcus met Mr. Patel at the county recorder's office. Papers were signed, stamps pressed into ink. When it was done, Patel shook his hand. Congratulations, Mr. Holloway. You are now the legal owner of Lot 1183B including the access road and the gate. Marcus exhaled slowly, a smile breaking across his face. He could almost taste the victory. "This isn't just a win for me," Marcus said. "It's a message." The next morning, Marjorie was already waiting at the gate, clipboard in hand. When Marcus's truck rolled up, she stepped forward with a familiar smirk. "Mr. Holloway, I'm afraid your fines have—" Marcus rolled down his window, cutting her off. "Save it, Marjorie." She blinked. "Excuse me?" Marcus pulled out a folded document, crisp and official. He held it up so she could see the seal at the bottom. "This," Marcus said, "is the deed. As of yesterday, I own this land, which means your precious gate doesn't belong to the HOA anymore. It belongs to me." For the first time, Marjorie's mask cracked. Her lips parted, eyes widening, her clipboard trembling in her hands. You can't—" "Oh, I can," Marcus said coolly. "And I did." The residents nearby, watching from a distance, began whispering furiously. Some gasped. Others grinned. Word was spreading like wildfire. Marcus tipped his hat, shifted into gear, and drove slowly through the gate, his gate now, leaving Marjorie standing frozen, the clipboard useless in her hands. But Marcus knew better than to celebrate too soon. Because the HOA wasn't going to roll over. No, Marjorie's pride was wounded, and prideful people were dangerous. That night, as Marcus sat on his porch staring out at the moonlit fields, his phone buzzed, an unknown number. He answered. A voice, low and threatening, hissed through the speaker. "You think you've won, Holloway, but you don't know who you're dealing with. This isn't over." The line went dead. Marcus sat in silence, the weight of the words heavy in the night air. The war wasn't finished, it was only just beginning. It was a Tuesday evening when Marcus walked into the HOA's monthly board meeting. The conference room was buzzing, papers shuffled, water bottles clinked, and Marjorie's sharp voice cut above the chatter like a drill sergeant. "Next on the agenda," she announced smugly, "is the enforcement of penalties against Mr. Holloway for continued violations." Marcus didn't flinch. He walked to the front with slow, deliberate steps, carrying a thick envelope under his arm. The crowd murmured, some neighbors curious, others nervous. Everyone knew Marcus had been beaten down for months. Many assumed tonight was the night he'd either beg for leniency or finally give up. But Marcus had a different plan. He placed the envelope on the table with a solid thunk. The sound silenced the room. "What's this?" Marjorie demanded. Marcus's eyes locked on hers. His voice was steady, but underneath it burned years of restraint finally snapping. "That," he said, "is a deed transfer. As of last week, I own the access road to this community, including that beautiful gate you all are so proud of." The silence lasted only a second, then chaos. Board members lunged for the documents, flipping through them with trembling hands. Gasps erupted, papers rattled, and one man muttered, "Oh my God, it's real." Marjorie's face went pale. This is impossible." Marcus stepped closer, his presence filling the room like a storm. "No, Marjorie. What's impossible is the way you've treated me and my neighbors. You want me gone. You want me humiliated, but now you don't get in or out of this community without my key." The neighbors sitting in the back began whispering, first in disbelief, then in relief, then in open laughter. The very gate the HOA had used to box Marcus out was now the symbol of their captivity. The fallout was immediate. The very next morning, Marcus installed his own lock on the gate. A fresh, shiny padlock clicked shut as dawn broke. Cars lined up, engines idling, board members fuming. Marjorie stormed out in her silk scarf, pounding on the gate. "You can't do this. You're holding us hostage," she shrieked. Marcus stood calmly on the other side, Jorge and a few supportive neighbors by his side. "I'm not holding you hostage," Marcus said coolly. "I'm simply enforcing property rights, something you all seem to understand very well, when it benefits you." Drivers honked, tempers flared, and for the first time, the HOA's power melted into panic. The tables had turned. The HOA that prided itself on control suddenly found itself trapped, begging Marcus for permission to use the very road they once blocked him from. It wasn't just about land anymore, it was about justice. For Marcus, for Jorge, for every neighbor silenced under the weight of HOA intimidation. The hunter had become the hunted. Within days, the HOA scrambled. They called emergency meetings. They called lawyers. They even called the county office to see if Marcus's purchase could be overturned. But the paperwork was ironclad. The road, the gate, the easement, all legally his. When a local reporter caught wind of the chaos, the story spread like wildfire. Black rancher outsmarts HOA, buys the gate they used to fence him in. News crews parked outside interviewing neighbors. Some admitted they'd been too afraid to stand up to the HOA. Others smiled proudly, saying Marcus gave them hope. Marjorie refused interviews, but her face, red and twisted with rage, became a meme online. The HOA's last weapon was the court. They filed an emergency injunction, demanding Marcus be forced to unlock the gate. But when the case landed in front of a judge, Marcus arrived prepared. His lawyer presented every harassment notice, every bogus fine, every record of blocked deliveries. The judge leaned back, unimpressed with the HOA's theatrics. "So let me get this straight," he said. "You built a gate on property you didn't own, used it to restrict access to Mr. Holloway's land, and now you're angry that he, legally bought the land and gate himself." The courtroom chuckled. The HOA's lawyer squirmed. Marjorie's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. The judge's gavel struck. "Case dismissed. Mr. Holloway has every right to control his property." The neighbors cheered. Marcus didn't gloat, but inside the weight of months of abuse finally lifted. The HOA's power crumbled. Membership dropped. Fines stopped. Neighbors who once cowered under Marjorie's reign now rallied around Marcus. And Marcus? He didn't use his new power to oppress. Instead, he unlocked the gate during the day for residents, only restricting HOA board members when they tried to harass others. The message was clear. Fairness would reign where intimidation once ruled. Jorge, his neighbor, who had also suffered fines, clasped Marcus's hand one evening. "You didn't just fight for yourself, Herman. You fought for all of us." For weeks, the HOA tried to save face. They sent out glossy newsletters pretending nothing had happened. But everyone knew. The balance of power had shifted forever. Marjorie eventually resigned in disgrace. The once feared board became a shell of itself, stripped of authority and respect. Meanwhile, Marcus's ranch flourished. With no more blocked feed deliveries or harassment, his cattle thrived. He repaired the barn, painted it bold red, and planted new crops along the fence line. Every time Marcus passed through the gate, he smiled. Not because he wanted revenge, but because the gate had become a symbol of resilience, of standing tall against oppression, of reclaiming dignity. Local newspapers called him the man who bought his freedom. But Marcus didn't see it that way. He hadn't bought freedom. He had earned it with patience, strategy, and the refusal to bow. This wasn't just Marcus's victory. It was a lesson. That when people in power abuse their positions, when they weaponize rules to crush the vulnerable, there comes a time when the oppressed fight back. Sometimes with protests, sometimes with voices, and sometimes with deeds, signed in ink, that turn the tables forever. The hunter had become the hunted. And Marcus Holloway's story? It was proof that justice, though slow, always finds its way home.